let's move on to our game review. Tail of the tape, we are reviewing a game called Yokohama. It's from 2016. The designer is Hisashi Hayashi. And the artist is Hisashi Hayashi and Adam McIver and Ryo Nayamo. And the publisher is Tasty Minstrel Games. We just mentioned them a couple weeks ago when we did Gaia Project. Tasty Minstrel puts out Yokohama. And this is one of those games that almost slipped under the radar. I think people know about it, but probably hasn't got the plays that it should. Jake, you want to tell us the basics of what Yokohama is and what it's about?
Yeah, you're essentially okay. So you broke this down to me beautifully when we were sitting down to play it, and it's essentially about this amazing time period. And you'll correct me if I'm wrong, because fried egg brains here on this end. But it's this amazing time period in Japan's history when they made this unbelievable leap forward. And perhaps for the better or not, that's to be debated, from what could almost be called like a Middle Ages society to a modern society.
It's called the Meiji Restoration. Yeah, exactly right. So
thank you. I was going to say pepper in some actual.
No. It's good. But, Japan was very, very xenophobic, and they basically shuttered their borders for. Not decades, for centuries. They isolated themselves.
It was like a mystical fey land where nobody had ever been.
And when they did that, they were the king. They were the king of the castle. They were about as technologically advanced and sophisticated a society as ever you would have. And then an incident happened where I believe it was an American battleship or destroyer pulled into Edo Harbor, to Tokyo Harbor, and it was like aliens landing on the planet. Yes. And so, being the Japanese and who they are, they said, well, clearly we've made some mistakes. We're going to have to engage with the rest of the world because they are lapping us. And we're going to have to, for our own survival, we're going to have to ramp up. And
that's right. It's chess, not checkers.
That's right. And that's what Yokohama is. Yokohama is about the Meiji period, and we are playing merchants, essentially, because what's happening is there are, the world, now that we're trading with them, they want things that we have, things like copper and silk and stuff like that. And they're giving us orders, that we can fulfill and make more money and get more prestige. And at the same time, we're using that to build up our own society, right?
Absolutely.
It's really kind of cool, I think.
It's very cool. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
So let's talk about the game and how it is. Is it played on a board, Jake?
Well, not exactly. It's sort of a piecemeal board, so to speak. There's lots of little mini boards. If there's a term for that, I don't know it. But it sort of all comes together on the table. Of course, we played it on... oh gosh, what's the name of that site? Tabletop?
Board Game Arena. Board Game Arena.
Board Game Arena. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And it's sort of a simulation. But we did discuss briefly how it would lay out in real life, because of course you played it that way. And it's not like one big board. It's more like lots of little stations.
Exactly right. And one of the great things about that is that each game, the board looks completely different. And depending on where some of these buildings are, can radically change the way a game plays.
Absolutely, because a lot of the gameplay has to do with sort of not exactly area control at all. It's more like you're mapping you're making moves that you have to make actual moves to get to certain places in order to do certain maneuvers.
Exactly. So the way an average turn would go is the first thing you're going to do is you get to take a bonus action at the beginning and at the end of your turn. We'll get into that in a minute. And then when you take your regular action, you're going to put out assistants. You are either going to put out 2 assistants in any one location, or you're going to put 3 assistants out, 1 each in a different location. And then once you've done that, you're going to move the president of your company. The president of your company is a regular pawn. The other ones are just little cubes. And when you move your president, he has to move to a place that has an assistant. And not only that,
because the way you described it to me is that you're like the path that you're mapping with your assistants leads to where you hope to put your president, such that you can take that action.
Exactly. So not only is the place you're going to end up with the president have to have an assistant, but all the places in between on the road to that place has to have an assistant.
Exactly. You can't just jump from one to the other.
Which creates a really interesting spatial puzzle, doesn't it?
It does, especially when you take into account that the other people are doing that too, and there are consequences for other people being in your way.
Yes. If somebody else's president is in your way, you got to pay them a yen just to move through where they are.
Absolutely. And if somebody's president is where you want to end up, too bad for you.
Can't go there. Exactly right.
Can't go there.
Very, very tight game money-wise, too. 1 yen doesn't sound like a lot. Boy, oh boy, 1 yen killed me last game. Just killed me. And it was Jake.
Yeah.
It was always Jake. The last game we played.
It was me, but to be fair, can we just tell the world here that it was purely through a misunderstanding and not a good understanding of what I was doing? It's not like I was a devious, like, ooh, I'm going to F him up real good by going here. No. It was like, what little thing can I achieve in my first play? And then just randomly, and I guess, haha, for me, that I messed him up pretty good.
So when you move the president, wherever the president ends up, that is the building you're going to activate, and that is the action that you're going to take. There are lots of different buildings. They do lots of different things. The most common one would be the resource gathering buildings, right? So there is a building. Exactly right. There are 2 buildings for fish. There is a building for tea. There is a building for copper, and there is a building for silk. And
Sure, and of course, all of these help in completing the orders, which is only a small portion of the overall game, but it's a portion that I focused on because it seems like the easiest access into some of the play.
Yeah, a lot of points are going to be gained through fulfilling those foreign orders. Foreign orders will be, cards that are available to you that you have to go to the port or to the dock, and you have to acquire those cards. And when you acquire those cards, they're going to allow you and only you to fulfill that. So this one says, I need to turn in 1 silk, 2 copper, and 4 fish. And if I do that, I'm going to get these rewards. I'm going to get 9 fame, and I'm going to get 2 imported goods or something like or things along those lines.
So it's a bit of a moving puzzle because not only do you have to actually move to get the components to fill that reward, you also have to do the timing right. Because you know what this game reminds me of, which in my mind I think of all the time with a lot of the games we play, is the guy that keeps the plate spinning on the post. And you gotta like have a lot of different things keeping moving, because otherwise you get passed by or stuff drops and you can't really do anything.
Yeah. And part of that is managing those assistants. Remember I said at the beginning of your turn, you're going to put 2 assistants in 1 space, or you're going to put 1 assistant in 3 different spaces. What I didn't say is that when your president lands on a space and that's the action they're going to take, the number of assistants that are on that space with him plus him equal how powerful an action he can take. Each action space has a slot for 1 action, 2 actions, 3 actions, 4 actions, or 5 actions. In order to do 5 actions, you would have to have 4 assistants there and your president, or you can also build a building there. You could build a shop house, or you could build a trading post there. If you have a trading post or a shop house, essentially you own that space. That space is, you have a vested interest in that location, and whenever you take an action there, it counts as an extra assistance there.
Yeah, it's a permanent +1 to whatever action you want to take there.
Right. So the T space, for instance, 1 gets you 1 T, 2 gets you 2 T, so on and so forth. Once you get up to the 4 level, though, the 4 level it would allow you to get 4 T per se. So just as an example, I think it's actually 3, but let's say it's 4. Plus, once you're at the 4 level, that's the level where it allows you to build a shop house or a trading post in that location.
Sure.
In order to do
Which
that,
is why it's so important to like balance out whether or not you're building your route to a spot, or whether you're going to like amass your guys there so as to activate that power, because it all starts to multiply in your favor if you do it right.
And the worst part is that once you take that big action, once you have your 4 assistants there, and you take that level 5 action, what happens to those assistants, Jake?
Yeah, well, this is where it gets tricky because there's. Tell me if I'm getting this right, but either they go back to your hand, or they're stuck there. Remind me, because there was two different things that caught me up a few times.
Yeah, you had unlocked a technology or special power that allowed you to, or I did, that kept people on the board. But generally, all those assistants in the location that you have activated come back into your hand.
They go back, right? Okay, that's what I thought.
Which is fine, because you want to be putting guys out and changing the routes you can take on the board and changing where you're going to be taking those actions. But it's one of these things where you are constantly fighting this economy of your assistants. I don't have enough assistants to place this turn, or I don't have enough assistants out on the board right now.
Right. And there was a spot, I think, that unlocked further assistance. Am I right?
Yes, there is. Yes, there's a spot on the board that allows you to go into your warehouse, which is your own personal card that you have in front of you.
Right.
And the warehouse is going to allow you to unlock more assistants, which are free, shop houses, which cost 2 each, or trading posts, which cost 4, 5, 6. Respectively, for the first, second, or third one that you unlock. Trading posts.
But of course, you have to be really careful with your momentum, because if you take the time to go get more guys, you may have missed the wave on what you needed them for.
Precisely right. Some of the other buildings, there's a technology space that you can go to, and when you do that, you're unlocking technologies. There are 5 technologies available at any given moment, and they have varying costs, and more assistance means you can afford the more expensive technologies. Some of them just offer lots of victory points, like 10 victory points, but some of them offer bonuses that will happen for the rest of the game. Like, one is every time you build a shop house anywhere, you're going to get a coin, you're going to get a yen for that.
Right.
So building shop houses suddenly becomes an economy thing for you, and you can make money doing that. Another one that I had was every time you use your president in a space, you can leave one of your assistants behind. You don't have to take them all.
The variable engine building here is pretty impressive. There's so many different routes you can go to really get your machine working.
Exactly so. So another thing that starts the game is there are objectives. There are objective cards in the game, and each game will feature 3 of those. There's a fairly decent stack of them, so you're never going to play the same game twice. And they basically say they're the races to do these conditions. The last game we played, one of them was have 7T. If you have 7T acquired, and you're the first person to do that, guess what? You're going to get 9 victory points for doing that. Everybody else can get 6 victory points or 7 victory points when they do it, but the first person is going to get those extra points for that.
Sure, it's a certain incentive reward for certain kinds of engines.
Exactly right. There was another one that was technologies. If you've built 4 different technologies, you're going to get 10 points and 8 points for anybody else that does it after the first person that did it. And so on.
I feel like this is a really good example of a game where you could play it 100 times and it would never be the same.
You know what? I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, because it just has so many variable branches for you to, maneuver throughout. I mean, I sort of saw that after a few minutes of playing this, that it's like a fractal pattern of, you could have an idea of what you're trying to achieve, but there's so many variables that you have to be really flexible to sort of change with the changes that happen to you.
100%. It is one of those, it's a really, really interesting game. There's something that I really love in certain games. The game I'm thinking of right now is Gaia Project. Gaia Project, when you are playing Gaia Project at a higher level, like at a reasonably high level, when you are deciding, you have to decide which alien race you're going to play, right? That decision is crucial because the races play very, very differently and have different strengths and weaknesses. And there are the factors you need to factor in deciding what race to play would boggle your mind. You have to look.
It's almost too many to really decode back to its origin.
Almost, but not, because you really can. You look at the map changes every game, right? The planets and the ones that are closer to each other. You look at that and say, oh, it looks like the white planets and the red planets have an advantage in this map. So the races that are white. Oh, Jesus. How did I get myself into this
Well,
trouble? The white aliens and the red
color.
aliens, the white aliens and the red aliens have an advantage. But then I have to look over at the technology tracks, and I have to see what technologies are in which columns, and that is gonna change that. Then I have to look at what score points each round in the game, and what are the 2 end game victory point things that we're going for. Each one of those suggests a different alien is better than alien A is better than alien B, or alien C is better than alien A, and so on and so forth. And figuring that out is a real challenge. It just shows the depth of the game.
A lot of information to process.
Yeah, and this game is very much like that, because all of those buildings are going to change each game. The order that they're in, where they are, they're going to be dealt out at random, flipped up, and you're going to see a very different map. And as we discussed, moving your president around to various spots can be extraordinarily easy if the complementary locations you want to go to are right near each other, or impossibly difficult if they're on opposite sides of the map. Forcing
the
you to change
economy
your
of motion is intense. You got to really think it through.
Yes. And then in addition, those victory point conditions that you're aiming for, that changes the game each turn, each game that you play. The starting technologies that are out there, the starting contracts that are on the dock and on the port are going to radically change what strategy you should be going for. And then this is
a good example of a game that reminds me how impressed I am with game creators. Because like trying to decode is one thing, but coding it in the first place is like, who are these people? They're some kind of crazy genius.
Yeah, I totally agree. What about the art and presentation? How did you feel about that in this game?
I give it a C-.
Okay.
D+, C-. The artwork is, as you know, to me, very important, but let me put it to you this way. The game was so fun that it didn't kind of matter to me as much.
Okay.
But did I actually think that the artwork itself was great? Not really. It's just okay. I mean, let's put this in perspective. It's way better than I could draw. Yeah. But as far as my own, what I would be like, whoa, this was beautiful. Not really.
Gotcha.
Not really.
I kind of like it. It's got a very mannered Japanese style to it. In that it's very simple. It's very simple and very clean. The iconography is very clear, which when you're considering a game which has 4 or 5 main resources, and then we didn't even get into the countries aspect of this, which we should talk about briefly. There's a lot of information to parse, and it is very clearly delineated in this game.
That's true, but that wasn't exactly what you asked.
No, it's true.
Thinking about how does the artwork actually look?
Yep.
You know, it's okay. Did it do a good job? Yeah, it did a really good job.
Yeah. No. It's not tremendously atmospheric. It's
exactly.
It's pretty, but not atmospheric.
Thing you'll ever see, you know. But it works really well.
Yeah.
At no point did I have to stop and say, wait a second, where is the tea house or whatever? You know what I mean? So it did its job for sure.
So let's talk about those foreign influence markers.
Yeah, go.
So Meiji Restoration, right? These are a people that have not had any foreign influence in their country for decades, hundreds of years, in actuality, right? And now all of a sudden they're getting this foreign influence in, and the game reflects that by giving you foreign influence markers. Essentially, what this is whenever you get a technology, or whenever you fulfill a contract, right, for a foreign delivery, you are acquiring a flag. The card itself has a flag on it. So I send all of this copper and this silk to America, and I have an American flag now. If I then get the telephone technology, and that's also an American invention, all of a sudden, I have 2 American flags. The moment you have 2 flags of the same country, you get a foreign influence marker. And that comes to you. It's basically a foreign mercenary, I think is what the game calls it. It's weird because I don't think mercenaries are what it really represents.
No, that's not quite the best name for it, but continue.
Sure. That marker is a very powerful thing. What that is basically anytime, like I said, at the beginning and end of your turn, you're going to have an extra action that you can take. extra actions are things like fulfill orders. So you can fulfill an order at any time. It doesn't take an action to do that, all that sort of stuff. But it also is, do you want to use one of these foreign influence markers? And if you do, you get to take a whole nother turn. The turn does not require you to move your president. You don't get the benefit of the president either. But any other space that you have on the board where you have those assistants, you can take that action as well with that foreign assistant.
And in a game that's tight, clearly that's a huge benefit.
Yes. And I think in the last game, neither you nor I did that particularly well.
No, I
and
didn't.
I think our dear friend
But
Ben.
we both did get the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, our dear friend Ben used that to great effect. He knew how to chain those actions.
He crushed it. What I was going to say when I was rudely interrupting you is we both did achieve. In fact, maybe all three of us did. I don't remember. The one where if you fulfill a contract for every single nation, right?
Yes,
then you get what did they call it? What do you get when you do that? I forget the term for it.
It's huge points at the end of the game. I think it's something like there are 5 nations, and if you have if you have those foreign influence markers from all 5, or if you have flags from all 5, you're going to get something like 16 victory points, 12 if you have 4, 8 if you have 3, so on and so forth. Something along those lines. So you're collecting sets of those. Yeah, let's talk about victory points. Let's talk about how you score victory points. Completing contracts scores victory points almost every single time you complete contracts. So that's a lot of victory points.
Basically, my entire game that first playthrough. Like that was the toehold I could get into this game. Honestly, was just that mechanic of like, okay, when I can. Go get a contract. When I can, go get the resource, fulfill the contract. Hey, look at that. I played the game.
You scored like 90 points. You did quite well. I think,
No, I did okay. Okay. I mean, again, it was a casual gamer's, first play at this very complex game. But I think it would be a good way for somebody who was like me to sort of get access to something as complex as this, because that much at least wasn't so hard to really figure out. That part at least was, and quite frankly, enjoyable. I mean, the idea of having a goal and achieving it over and over within the game kept the game going for me, as opposed to some games where, like, if the goal is so convoluted and so many complex steps to achieve at the very end, I and people like me might lose a little interest and steam along the way.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Victory points can also be gotten through technologies. They score victory points a lot of times, and then at the end of the
you had some technology.
I did. I played the technology game. I did pretty well.
Yeah, you
did. The victory points you get from that are also bolstered by, at the end of the game, the person with the most technologies gets another victory point bonus, and the second place gets so on and so forth. There are also locations on the board. There is the church, and there is the customs house. And by going to these places, in the church, you are getting faith influence, essentially, right? Whether it's Shinto or whatever, I'm not sure what faith we're talking about here, but you can donate to the church. So extra resources that you have, you turn over to the church to get bigger bonuses. Those score a lot of points in the church, and then the church also gives you points at the end of the game for the person that has the most influence in the church. And the same thing for the custom house. The custom house there are foreign goods that come into the country through trading. Usually, is almost always the way it works. And when you get these foreign goods, they can be turned into the customs house for some big points as well. And then once again, that scores at the end of the game as well. So there's lots of different avenues to get your points. You're probably it is going to be a trading game to some degree. So I don't think it's possible to avoid getting resources and trading them in. I don't think that's something you can't do, because too many of the points come through that system.
Not unless if you want to win, you got to participate in that.
Yeah. And then, like we said, those flags, collecting sets of flags gets you a lot of points in the game. The person who does the best with the same resources that everyone else has, who's taking his actions wisely, who is moving his president well, who is placing his assistants smartly, who is zagging when everyone else is zigging, and going for the rewards that are not being fought over or captured, is going to win this game. So final thoughts. What's your final verdict on Yokohama?
I give this one a big thumbs up. I realized pretty right away after Ben's teach and, two or three moves into it, that this was one of those games where if this was the only game I ever played, I could see getting at least better at it, if not good at it. And it's complex enough for those who need that it could be fun over and over. And it's not so complex, at least in the teach, that someone like a casual gamer could get into it to enjoy it, and not get lost in it. Like I saw what you guys were doing. I don't think I could do what you guys were doing, at least not on the first play, but it's there and it's really well crafted. I had a lot of fun playing it. I would definitely recommend it.
Totally. Yeah, I think the teach of the game is not the shortest, which is unfortunate because I think
shortest. But if you've got someone who knows what they're doing, then you know what? If you've ever been taught other games before, then I agree that this teach wasn't so bad. But if this was your first game that you ever played in this genre, like of board games, and someone sat you down and was like, "Hey, I'm going to teach you a new fun game," and then spent that much time laying that information, there'd be no way.
Yeah. I guess what I mean by that is that the game is actually quite easy to understand. When you start playing the game, a couple turns in, you're like, "Oh, I get it. I see what this game is. I know how to play. I'm good." There are enough things that need to be taught though before you start play that the teach isn't as short as I wished it was, because I think that this is a very accessible game. I think this is a game that plays medium heavy, or at least heavy medium. Let's say that.
Yeah, heavy medium is what I would say.
Yeah,
coming from a very medium to light viewpoint.
Yeah, but it's different than the way it's easy to play. Like the actual play of the game feels kind of medium. The level of strategy is heavier than that. There's a lot that's going into it. There's a lot of good, tough choices.
100% agree with the way you just put that. The actual things you're doing, not so difficult, but the strategy and thought behind them is pretty intense.
Yeah, and when we talk about about really, really solid Euros of the last 5 to 10 years, Yokohama doesn't really get mentioned. We don't really bring it up. It's one of those that's almost slipping through the cracks. I think. Look, before COVID, we were reviewing the next new hotness that we would have at the table. One of the blessings of COVID is that the pipeline has slowed down. Right? Yeah. We're not sipping from a fire hose anymore, and we're actually finding time to go back a little bit and find games like Gaia Project, to find games like Yokohama, games that really people kind of missed on the first go around. And I'm really, really happy that we got a chance to talk to everybody about it, because Yokohama is a great game. It really, really is.
It's solid, and
it's unique enough. It is significantly different than a lot of other games of its type. And it's a Japanese designer. I think the Japanese are turning out some kind of amazing products. And if I was to guess in the next decade where the next big boom in great game design is going to come from, there's a very good chance that it is going to come from countries like South Korea, Japan, and China. And of those three, maybe Japan the most. I think that the Japanese game design is advancing in leaps and bounds, and they're coming up with some really great designs. And Yokohama just shows how original, how unique, and really how solid their game design is.
Mm-hmm. What about all those amazing games coming out of North Korea, though? Look at that.
Oh, so good, so good.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Shell Your Uncle is my favorite. That's really good. I mean, basically, it's just Mine Hunter, but you're the one running around in the minefield. Still pretty good.
No, this is a great game, and I'm super glad this is what we chose to review.
It is available through Tasty Minstrel Games. I think it's out there and available right now. Last time I checked was a little while ago when we were talking about doing this. But yeah, it should be available out there. I think it's a great find. Highly recommend
Absolutely.
it.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.